Okay, good. We're ready. As I was saying, we'll be switching between notes and the PowerPoint. And this afternoon, this is our topic, the remnant of Revelation, the identity of God's church at the end of time. Okay. Now, this is our key verse, Revelation chapter 12 and verse 17, because this is the verse where suddenly, without any introduction, a new actor comes onto the scene. And Revelation's doing this all the time. We've noted it, huh? You get beasts coming up and you've got no background. It's only as you read further on that you start to get insights into who these actors actually are. And in Revelation chapter 12, verse 17, we've seen the dragon. The dragon became furious with the woman. This is after the first period of persecution, the 1260 years. The woman has escaped, and the dragon is absolutely furious. And then he went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold the testimony of Jesus. And so there is the remnant. We've read the verse several times already, but we haven't focused particularly on the verse because we need more information to deal adequately with this. Now, if you have a look at your notes on the first page, I've given you a number of translations of that phrase, the rest of her offspring. This is T25. T25. So make sure you've got the right page, T25. And sometimes it's translated the rest of her offspring, NIV, ESV, NKJV, etc. Other translations call it the rest of her children, rest of her seed in a few translations, the remnant of her seed in the KJV. So that's where we get it from, this phrase, the remnant of her seed. And it's planted fairly deeply into Seventh-day Adventist thinking because of the use of the King James Version, you see. But these are other valid translations. The rest of her descendants, her other offspring. Now, two words we need to look at, and I haven't put this in your notes, but this word here, offspring, is sperma in Greek. It means that which is sown. So it's talking about literal seeds. The sower went forth to sow. He's casting the seeds, and metaphorically, as a metaphor, it can apply to descendants. You know, the son would be the seed of the father, and so on. So those translations are fairly good. And the word rest means the remaining ones. The remaining ones. And so various translations, all of those I think are pretty good. They all mean exactly the same thing. Right at the end of time, there'll be a group which are identified as the remnant of her seed or the rest of her offspring. Now, question, because when we read this, we need to find out who's the her. Yeah? So who are we talking about here? How do you know? Because that is a pronoun, yeah? And a pronoun refers back to a preceding noun, normally. And so the preceding noun is the woman. So this is the rest of the woman's offspring, the remaining ones of the woman's offspring. Now, what does that imply? What does that imply? Rest of her offspring. It means there were others, doesn't it? So I just want to spend a couple of minutes on history so we get this clear, what we're talking about. So we start going back. The woman is the woman who was in the wilderness for 1260 years. And so that's the woman. And it's talking about the offspring of that woman that was in the wilderness, that church that was in the wilderness for 1260 years. We're clear on that, huh? Okay. She's persecuted. She's driven into the wilderness where God's going to look after her. And this is the time period from 538 to roughly 1798. It's a period of time when the dragon and the first beast in chapter 13 were persecuting and making war against the church, the church. Now, just a couple of dates. During that 1260 years, in 1517 AD, Luther, with a hammer, knocking a piece of paper on the door of the cathedral, the 95 Theses of Luther, which led into the Protestant Reformation, split in the church. Roman Catholicism began to lose its dominance over Europe. But what the Reformation led to, this is the point, it led to the establishment of state churches. That is, these churches were in some way similar to the church in Rome in that they had an integral relationship with the government. For example, the Lutheran Church, integrated, supporting the princes of Germany supporting, and so relationship existed between government and religion. The same with, it should be the Reformed churches in Europe. They formed the same basic arrangement. So you have, for example, you've got the Dutch Reformed churches, which had a close relationship with the government. You've got the Presbyterian Church, which in Scotland was closely integrated with government circles. And then you've got the Anglican Church. And who's the head of the Anglican Church? Exactly. And so you've got that same kind of relationship. So this is really where the Reformation basically led in Europe. It led to these state churches, and the result of the establishment of state churches was persecution of dissenters. So these churches basically following the same plan. Now we're doing this in a real thumbnail sketch, but you go into detail if you wanted to. The consequence of the persecution of dissenters, particularly England, was the flight of Puritans across to the North American continent, and in 1620, Pilgrim Fathers established the first of the colonies in North America. Now, we travel on through time. Lots of other dissenting groups came across into North America too and established themselves on the eastern coast of the United States. American independence, 1775 to 1783, military fight for independence. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris led to the recognition of the independence of the American colonies. And in 1787, the Constitution was ratified. So we're coming right up close to the end of the 1260-year period. Now here's the point. Because America is rooted in dissenters fleeing from the persecution by established churches, in the Constitution, what do we get? Separation of the powers of church and state. And that's where the situation for Protestantism in America differs from Protestantism in Europe. Are we okay on this? Now, consequence was the rise of Protestant denominations in America. Hey, in the 1800s, burst of Protestant churches and groups grew up. Mormonism, Seventh-day Adventism, later on Jehovah's Witnesses, the Shakers, and large numbers of other groups just suddenly began to burst out and to flourish in America. Now these Protestant denominations are the seed of the woman. You following? So these are the seed of the woman in the wilderness. These are the ones that the dragon has targeted in Revelation chapter 13. Second beast, great signs, causing fire to come down from heaven, bidding people to make an image to the beast, to set up another established church, but this time in America. This is what we were discussing. So we get a church that's just like the first church, the Church of Rome. And those who are deceived will flock in and ultimately form that united church in America. We clear? So who are the remnant of her seed? The rest of her seed? The ones who stay out. And what are they going to face? Persecution of dissenters. So the same business is going to recycle right at the end of time. We all right on that? So now you've got some idea of how this expression, the remnant of her seed, the rest of her offspring, is referring right at the end of time to the dissenting group who stay apart from that union that will take place. Now, right down the bottom of page 1, you've got point 2, which talks about the rest of her offspring. But let's have a look at the context first, the context of the remnant of her seed in Revelation chapter 12, verse 17. And we've done all this already. There's a diagram, I think, on the second page. Is that correct? Yeah. On the second page, there's a diagram. This is putting chapter 12, 17 in context. And we'll notice a number of important things from this. Now, we've done this already. We spent a bit of time building this up. Okay, remember chapter 12, 2 persecutions. It should be Revelation 13, 1 to 14, 5. We've got the 2 persecutors. And then in chapter 14, 6 to 20, we get the 3 angels' messages followed by the 2 harvests. So these are the chapters we looked at. In chapter 12, you've got your first period of persecution. We okay on that? And then it's followed by a second period of persecution, which is the war on the rest of her offspring. So that's chapter 12. This is the key verse. This is the one we're looking at. This is the one we want to put into context. Okay, you've got to do this if you really want to identify the remnant carefully. This is why we've been just going slowly, easy through, but now we start to pull it together and start to focus our material. Chapter 13, remember? First persecutor, sea beast, persecutes for 42 months, and then this is followed by the second persecutor, the land beast, and T24 are the notes that will identify him for you as the United States. Calls to worship the image, and the warnings given, disobey and you'll die. So that is the second beast of Revelation chapter 13. We've covered that already. So we're going fairly fast through it. And then what comes afterwards is Revelation 14, 1 to 5, the 144,000, and they're standing on Mount Zion. So look, we got one good point here. Now we'll come back to that. Chapter 14, 6, we get the 3 angels' messages. You notice we already put it with chapter 13. We said in chapter 13 you've got the call to worship the image or die. And in the 3 angels' messages you've got the call to worship the Creator. We're clear on that? And the warning given, disobey, this is disobey the call to worship the Creator, and you drink of the wine of God's wrath poured out unmixed. We get the warning of the 7 last plagues. And what follows the 3 angels' messages? Remember? The 2 harvests. Okay. So what is the context of chapter 12 and verse 17? This one? It's this, because it's parallel in time. Yeah? So you want to understand about the war on the remnant, or who the remnant is, you're going to find the remnant here in chapter 13. Are we okay on this? And we're going to find them here in chapter 14. And so these three groups of texts are the context for the remnant. And if we put those three texts together, we're going to find some points coming out which may help us to identify the remnant. We okay, or any questions? We've covered this already. We've just been building up slowly to come to this point. Now, I'm going to make a point here which will probably come into your notes a bit later, but I think it comes off this quite clear. We get a time frame for the remnant. What's the time frame? What's the setting in Earth's history when the remnant will come onto the stage? Don't have to guess at it, it's there. It comes after the first period of persecution. Yeah? We okay on that, huh? That's obvious. But it immediately precedes the two harvests and the picture of the saints redeemed standing on Mount Zion with the Lamb. And so this is the identification of the group that will undergo that second period of persecution. That's what the war is, the second period of persecution. They're the ones who will be announcing this message. We're clear? Which will result in the two harvests. So you want the remnant? Look for them. When? Straight after the first period of persecution? No. You're much better to look at them just prior to the harvest of the earth and the second coming, because it's that message that divides the world into two camps, into two groups. So they are God's end time community. So that's your first key point. If you look for the remnant, where are you going to look for them? Right at the end of time. They are the ones who will be ushering in a sense, ushering in alive at the time of the second coming. They will be the ones who go through that period of persecution, which is descriptive of the war on the remnant. That's easy, isn't it? Okay, so you've got 1 point in time.
Are we carrying on the history of the Huguenots, Waldensians, and we join that group, or is this a whole new group separate?
It's separated in time. Yeah. Huguenots were in the first persecution period. Right. These are the women in the wilderness. Correct. Yeah. And out of the women in the wilderness has come their influence into the Protestant Reformation and Protestantism. Right. And then we travel on down, we go down to the place where you get denominationalism. And then you get, moving on down through time, you're going to get that counterfeit revival. We clear?
So we're distinct from that?
We are, but the roots of truth go back.
Sort of
carrying the banner on. Sure. Great controversy, those chapters where she's dealing with Huguenots, chapter 3, chapter 4, the Albigenses, and then she starts to move on through the various periods of the Reformation, and then she'll come to William Miller and the proclamation. She's showing that passing on of the banner of truth. And so, and the other thing that really is important growing out of this, but a bit to the side, is an Adventist perspective on church history. Because the role of the remnant is the recovery of apostolic truth. You following? So it's an ever opening to the Word of God in order that we might move more and more closer to the apostolic church. Yeah, okay.
Lost the first love.
Well, let's not go into that. Let's stick with this. All right, so those are your three groups. They parallel with respect to time and participants. So now we're going to look at these passages in order to discover the characteristics which will assist us in identifying the remnant. Okay. Now, look at Revelation chapter 12 and verse 17, and we've got two characteristics mentioned. They keep the commandments of God, and they have what? Right, the testimony of Jesus. So we need to explore these and to find out exactly what they are referring to, and that we will in a minute. Would you go across to Revelation chapter 12, chapter 14 and verse 12. This is point 2 on page 3. Point 2 on page 3. I've quoted it there. 14:12. Here is the patience of the saints. This comes straight after the three messages. Here is the patience. Remember the word patience, endurance. They're standing strong while the pressure's on. What pressure? The pressure of the persecution, the war on the remnant. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they who what? Keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. So how many times in those parallel passages do we have the commandment keeping mentioned? Twice. It's being emphasized. Twice. The remnant are being identified as those who keep the commandments. And it doesn't just say keep the commandments, but it specifies them. What does it say? The commandments of God. Now, why mention that if everybody's keeping the commandments of God? There's no point. Scripture is giving us now a key characteristic in the last days that will be identifiable as far as the remnant's concerned. They'll be commandment keepers. Now, I want to look just really briefly, just a couple of points. This is all in your notes, but we're going to summarize it a little bit. Right at the end of time, just before the second coming, we get the remnant, the rest of her offspring is the remnant, and they're facing quite a lot of trouble in the coalition of evil that's formed by the dragon and the beast and the false prophet. Okay, we're clear on this. We've done this already, Babylon. And so it's the remnant versus this, or the remnant versus this on earth. The dragon is in the spiritual sphere, and what we've got up here in the spiritual sphere is Christ. Yeah? But now, let's go back to this beast. This beast, this is the first beast of Revelation 13, and we've dealt with this already. First beast of Revelation 13. We identified him. Because, hey, he's like a leopard, with feet like a bear and a mouth like a lion, and that led us straight back into where? Daniel chapter 7, and then we went into Revelation chapter 13, and we saw that this beast has got crowns on its horns. Remember this? So he's saying, go back to Daniel 7, and you'll find him ruling and reigning amongst the horns of Daniel chapter 7. And we went back there, and we looked, and we identified the beast as the little horn of Daniel chapter 7. Yeah? Now, look at Daniel chapter 7 and 25. Have a look at it. It'll be in your notes somewhere, but have a look at it in Scripture. Daniel 7:25. 7:25. And it talks about his activities, summarizes his activities. Could somebody read for us, please? Doesn't matter.
He shall speak promise words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change time and law.
Thank you.
The saints shall be given into his
he shall think or intend to change times and the law. So this little horn, this beast, he's a lawbreaker. He's thinking to change the law. Hey, once when Fulton College was re-establishing in Fiji, we drove past, we went there for a weekend to do some landscaping, a week actually, and as we turned down the side road that led into the college, there was a speed sign, 30. And some smart aleck from one of the villages had got some paint and done that. You see now. Well, what is wrong with that? Defacing public property, that's number one. But the second thing is, if I was the one who had done this and changed that speed sign, and now I go down that side road at 80 kilometres an hour, there's a police station here, and they stop me and say, you're speeding. I say, no, the sign says 80, and they say, since when? And I say, well, since I changed it last night. No, exactly. And what would they say? They would say, right, you're up on two problems now. Number one, number one, defacing public property, and number two, speeding. But I changed the sign. You had no authority to change the sign. You following this? And so this is what Daniel chapter 7:25 is saying, that the little horn has no authority to change it. And so what we're getting here is on the two sides, we're getting, I'm going to call them law keepers. We're clear on this? Yep. And law breakers. That's what we're going to get, those two groups, the law keepers and the law breakers. And so right at the end of time, the beast and its image will be following the commandments that the little horn thought to change. Now, over the page, this is on page 4. On page 4, I want you to notice this is summarizing what we've done already. Twice, 2 or 3 times we've done this already. We looked and we said the big issue with the first beast in Revelation 13 is that they are changing, attacking the first 4 commandments of the Decalogue. Remember this? And this is what comes in here, you see. So, are you going to be loyal to the Decalogue as changed? Or are you going to be loyal to the Decalogue as given by God? So that's where the division lies. And I've summarized them there. Commandments of God, you shall have no other gods before me. That's the first commandment. But the commandment of the sea beast and its image is they set up a system of worship, calling worship to the first beast, which effectively puts worship onto the dragon who's behind it. So the first commandment is under attack. It's being changed. Second commandment, you shall not make for yourself a graven image. Got that? And we go into chapter 13 and about verse 14, he sets up great signs, deceives, ordering people to set up an image to the beast, and that image is to be worshipped. And so, man, there you've got it. Setting up images, which is contrary to the second commandment. And you shall not bow down to them or worship them. And we've got all those texts we looked at where it talks about the mark of the beast, those who receive it and worship. Receive it and worship. And so it's a call to worship apart from the worship of God. And so this is where the remnant will be sticking. They'll say, no, 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 the commandment says, thou shalt not make images, and thou shalt only worship the Lord your God, you see? Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a picture of it, isn't it? That's a picture of it. And then the third commandment, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. And what does the beast do in chapter 13, 5 and 6? Opens his mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name. And that's there specifically. And the fourth commandment, we'll find the fourth commandment is alluded to in the first angel's message over the page, top of page 5. Top of page 5, where the First angel says, "Fear God, give glory to him, for the hour of his judgments come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of waters." And that's alluding back to the fourth commandment. And so the remnant in the last days are definitely going to be marked by the fact that they're commandment keepers. We're clear on that, huh? And that includes, it's not exclusive of just one commandment. It's not just one commandment. It's not just a 7-day Sabbath, but it is inclusive of the commandments of God, particularly the first 4. Those commands which are reflective of the fact that we love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our mind, with all our soul, and with all of our being, you see. This is where the dragon's putting his attack, trying to cut God's people off from their root, which is in God himself. Okay, so that's the first strong point. Second strong point, end of time, and there'll be a community of Christians who are commandment keepers. And folks, this loyalty to God, because this is what it is, it's loyalty to God versus loyalty to the institution, the established church that will be set up, which incidentally, and we won't go into it, but it's going to involve a change in the Constitution of the United States. Huh? That's what will ultimately come. That's what will ultimately come. Now, point number 3, it says they have the faith of Jesus. This is in chapter 14, verse 12. We okay? This is on page 5. The term faith of Jesus could be interpreted to mean the same kind of faith that Jesus had, huh? You know, faith in God, trust in God. And I think that's going to be needed, definitely needed in the last days. But the faith is also used as a technical term in the New Testament in several places. Now, what do I mean? Go to Jude verse 3. It's quoted there in your notes. Beloved, although I was very eager to write to you about our common salvation, I found it necessary to write, appealing to you to contend for the faith. Do you see that? That was once for all delivered to the saints. And so, what is the faith? It's the body of the teachings of Jesus, particularly with regard to salvation. But the remnant in the last days will not only have keeping of the commandments, but chapter 14:12, they'll also have the faith of Jesus. They will be a community of Christians who are biblically based and oriented, who hold fast to the teachings of Scripture. So right at the end of time, this group at the end of time, keeping the commandments, will have a dedication and commitment to the Word of God. Huh? Their question will be, well, show us from the Word. If what you're saying is true, show us from the Word and we will follow it. Show us from the Word. Whereas the other group has moved away from it. And folks, I tell you this, I was doing research the other day for one of these seminars, and I came across some material published in 1956 by the World Council of Churches, and it was dealing with an issue, and they were sliding off, and they were looking at the particular issue that they were investigating from the perspective of the beliefs of the other groups, the groups that form the World Council of Churches. They would not clearly say, well, let's find out what the Word of God says and follow the Word of God. Instead, they just fudge the issues and they end up with theological colleges scattered around the world which don't teach doctrine. They don't teach doctrine. They just teach airy-fairy, fluffy stuff, but no solid biblical studies because they don't want to be treading on the theological feet of member churches. And that's not the way to go. God's people in the last days will be saying, where's the thus saith the Lord? Biblically based. That's what we've got to make sure we are, a biblically based community of Christians. that we can establish our points of faith on the basis of the teachings of the Word. That's the important thing. Okay, now, third point, they have the testimony of Jesus. Are we all right on this? This is on the bottom of page 5. The testimony of Jesus mentioned in Revelation 19, 9 and 10. And I've got it down the bottom there. I just want us to read it and just notice the points. This is at the bottom of page 5 in your notes if you want to notice it, left-hand column. It says, "Blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb." And then I fell down at his feet to worship him. But he said to me, "You must not do that, for I am a fellow servant with you and your brethren who hold the testimony of Jesus." So that's the first statement. So you notice the points. You've got first, you've got the beatitude. Secondly, you've got John falling down to worship at the feet of the one who pronounces it. And then he's forbidden to do it. And then the one who speaks identifies himself as a fellow servant with you and your brethren. Now, when we come across into Revelation chapter 22, this is the second column, verse 9 and 10, again, it starts with a beatitude. Notice, "Blessed is he who keeps the words of the prophecy of this book." Another one of the 7 beatitudes scattered in Revelation. But then it says, "I fell down to worship at the feet of the angel." So what does John do? Falls down. And what does the angel say over the page? What does the angel say? Yes, he says, "You must not do that." See, it's almost word for word, huh? You following this? But then when you come to the last bit, he says exactly the same thing. "I am a fellow servant with you and your brethren." But where it differs is in chapter 22, it says, "Your brethren, the prophets." You see that? Whereas in chapter 19, it says, "Who hold the testimony of Jesus." So what's our conclusion? What's our conclusion? Well, that didn't last long. Exactly. The two phrases, your brethren, that's common, who hold the testimony of Jesus. And who are the ones who hold the testimony of Jesus? The prophets. It's the prophets. We're just following through the logical thinking here. Now go back to Revelation chapter 19. I think it's chapter 19. And read the verses that follow. Read what follows. What does it say? Keep going. Verse 10. No, read it in your Bibles. Verse 10. 19.
And I fell at his feet to worship him.
Yep.
And he said unto me, See thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant and of thy brethren, that have the testimony of Jesus. Worship God, for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
Testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Now, question. Who or what is the spirit of prophecy? No, we want to be specific. We want to be very, very specific here. Second Peter chapter 1, verse 20 and 21. 2 Peter 1, 20 and 21. Folks, let's just before we read this, let's just go back through this logically. Testimony of Jesus, which is held by the prophets, is a spirit of prophecy, yeah? So that's the circle. Now, 2 Peter 1, 20, 21. Read out loud.
Knowing this first, that no prophecy of the scripture is of any private interpretation.
Okay, no prophecy is of private interpretation. Keep going.
For the prophecy came not in the old time by the will of man, but holy men of God.
Yeah, so prophecy didn't come through man, but holy men of God. Keep going. Quick, read it. Spoke as they were moved by the Holy Spirit. So who is the spirit of prophecy? It's the Holy Spirit working in the church with the gift of prophecy. We're following this. And you find gift of prophecy mentioned over and over again in in 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and chapter 14. Over and over again, it's a gift. So manifestation of the gift of prophecy in the church at the end times. Are we clear? So this is another identifying characteristic of the remnant. Appear on the stage of earth history right at the end of time. We clear? Point 1. Point number 2, commitment to the keeping of the commandments of God. Point number 3, faith of Jesus. They're holding strongly to the Bible and its teachings. Clear? At a time when others are drifting away from it. And fourthly, manifestation of the gift of prophecy. And folks, we've had that manifestation. We've had a manifestation of the gift of prophecy in the writings and the work of Ellen White. She is not the spirit of prophecy. You following? Her writings are not the spirit of prophecy. John was on the island of Patmos for the word of God and for the testimony of Jesus, and he didn't have the writings of Ellen White. It goes bigger. She is a manifestation of the working of the spirit of prophecy, who is the Holy Spirit, gifting with the gift of prophecy. Okay, and I'm not saying she's the only. At the end of time, we may find more manifestations of this. But at the moment, we've had at least one manifestation in the writing and the person of Ellen G. White. Are we okay on this? Now, last point. And folks, don't miss this. Remember we went back and we looked at chapter 12, chapter 13 through to 14:5, and chapter 14. And in chapter 14, we find 3 messages. The message of the 3 angels. 3 aspects. Who preaches them? We've got to be specific here. No. The angel doesn't preach them. Let me see if I can go back fast. Yeah. These are preached against this message. So these are preached at the time of the war on the remnant. So the remnant is identified not only by the fact that it keeps the commandments and has the testimony of Jesus, not only that it has the commandments and the faith of Jesus, not only that it comes just before the second coming, but also the proclamation of these 3 messages. That's one of the identifying characteristics of the remnant. They will be preaching a message that's counteracting that of the established church. They'll be true dissenters right at the end of time, when the beast and the image have been set up and the proclamation going forth and the powers being exerted to worship the image or the beast, there'll be a group that will be proclaiming this message against this one. There'll be a clash of these messages in the last days, and everyone will have a decision to make. And the decision will be, you want to die now, or you want to drink the wine of the wrath of God poured out unmixed?
As you said before, that, show me in the Bible where it is. But as they bring out these new translations, I understand they're actually modifying the new translations to bring out the false word as well. So, in theory, can they not go to the Bible, modified Bible, shall we say?
Well, look, sometimes what we call modified Bibles, because we shouldn't get into conspiracy theories behind this, that people are, deliberately behind the scene, pulling. I think the dragon is conspiring behind the scenes. But what we're getting is a range of translations. You've got the text. This is the Greek text if we're talking about the New Testament. And then you get the word correspondent translations like the King James and the New King James and the ESV. They try and stick close to the word for word, and they try and get words accurate. But it doesn't always work this way, because you can't mechanically translate word for word. And so we move down to the other extreme where we get them saying, well, this is what the text means, and then they loosely translate it to give the thought or the idea that's in the text. So that's what's happening. We're getting a lot of translations which are paraphrases, focusing on thought and careless sometimes in the way they express things, versus this, and we're getting a range of translations in between. Some tend more to this end and some tend more towards that end. So that's the situation. You can't prove from a paraphrase. Paraphrases are okay for reading for devotional thoughts, but not for in-depth study. Look, I'd never give a Bible study out of the out of the Good News. I would avoid New Living Translation, because that tends to have some of the characteristics of paraphrasing in it. If you remind me, next year when we meet, I'll give you a sheet that will lay out where the different translations lie, so you know. Bible studies at this end. New King James, okay. ESV, okay. King James, okay. NIV, okay. Rather solid. But not perfect. None of them are perfect. Because even when I'm using ESV, I switch to ESV to use ESV for, our Bible studies from the New King James, because there were problems, but then I find sometimes a few problems in the ESV too. Just a few small problems. Is that okay? Now, going back to our final point was the proclamation of three angels' messages. And folks, when you measure up, you'll find that the only church I know that places that importance of that message in that context is the Seventh-day Adventist Church and offshoots of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But that's where the focus is. We've got an emphasis on the commandments of God. We've got a dedication, commitment to the study of the Word. We don't have a creed. We've got beliefs, which some might say are a creed, but we've got beliefs. But the beliefs are always open to re-examination. And General Conference has got the power to bring in new teachings that are relevant, and also to modify the expression of existing depending on biblical studies. So we really are a church that's moving deeper and deeper and deeper into a commitment to the study of the Word and the establishment of the Word. And in the last 30 years, since the 70s, particularly since the 70s, 80s, 90s, there's been increasing depth in Seventh-day Adventist biblical studies. And so we fulfill those characteristics. I don't know any other church that basically does. But I'm going to say something else too. In the context of this war on the remnant, there won't be a denomination that's marked by these characteristics. You follow, the denominations preparing a community of believers for the time of trouble such as never was. And when that war on the remnant opens up, don't think you'll be going to your local churches on Sabbath. Churches will be closed. Buildings will be taken over. The church and its members will be scattered, but God will have a movement on earth that's grown out of the Seventh-day Adventist denomination and its positions that will be the proclaimers of that last message and will be calling others to come out of her and to become part of that movement under the power of the latter rain through the Holy Spirit in the last days. And so that's where I see this rest of her offspring. In the last days, it's that persecuted community of Christians who have shared characteristics with the Seventh-day Adventist denomination will grow out of the Seventh-day Adventist denomination, but will be a movement of Spirit-indwelt Christians empowered by the latter rain. That's Revelation chapter 18, verse 1. To proclaim with a loud voice, the loud cry, the three angels' messages. All right, so do you think we've adequately identified the remnant? Okay. Your notes are there. You can go through them and see what you come up with. Well, we'll have a word of prayer, and then I'll just spend a couple of minutes and go through T24 really fast. Father, we just pause to thank you again for the opportunity to study. And we pray, Lord, you continue to bless us as we study not only together, but for our own selves into the book of Revelation in particular. Help us, Lord, in this way to be prepared for the events of the days that lie ahead of us, that we might be ready when you move upon us to proclaim that message with the fullness of the Spirit, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.